Here's where we are in the governance series. We completed phase 1, seeing the system, letters 1 to 12. We are in phase 2, designing the system, letters 13 to 30. We completed stage 1, entering design, letters 13A and 13B. We completed stage 2, stabilizing the core, letters 14 to 17. We completed stage 3, seeing clearly, letters 18 to 20. We completed stage 4, from activity to coherence, letters 21 to 23. We are now in stage 5, preventing regression, letters 24 to 26. We just completed letter 24, learning to navigate. We are in letter 25A, the discipline of calibration. Throughout the first 24 letters of this series, we have traveled together through a deliberate journey. We began by discovering that organizations often behave in ways their leaders never intentionally designed. We exposed hidden structural patterns that quietly shape decisions, relationships, accountability, execution, and performance. We then learned how to recognize those patterns, give them a common language, and intentionally design governance that replaces unconscious behavior with intentional structure. Without realizing it, something else has also been happening. Our perspective has been changing. Each letter has quietly raised our altitude. From every new vantage point, relationships that once appeared disconnected began revealing themselves as parts of a much larger system. Stage 5 brings together everything we have developed so far. Letter 24 invited us to observe ourselves as executives. It has expanded our awareness by helping us recognize that governance is influenced not only by what we observe, but also by the way we interpret what we observe. Letter 25A builds upon that awareness. It introduces a disciplined method for transforming observation into intentional navigation. Awareness changes perspective. Calibration helps us intentionally act upon that expanded perspective. Until now, we have been learning to recognize the landscape of governance. Beginning with this stage, we start navigating through it intentionally. Before we begin the case studies that follow, it is important to understand the instruments we will be using, the role each one plays, and how they work together as one integrated navigation system. The navigation toolbox. Every experienced navigator understands that a successful journey rarely depends upon one instrument. Navigation depends upon several instruments working together, each serving a different purpose. Throughout the previous letters, we intentionally developed those instruments one at a time. Stage 5 now brings them together as one integrated navigation system. The river. The river represents the continually changing environment in which every organization operates. Markets evolve, technology advances, customer expectations change, regulations change, leadership changes, people change. Like an actual river, organizations move through different conditions during different seasons. Sometimes the current moves quickly, sometimes the river widens into calmer water where reflection, preparation, and intentional adjustment become possible before continuing downstream. Neither condition is better than the other. Both are part of a journey. The lighthouse. The lighthouse represents the destination leadership has intentionally chosen. It reminds the organization why the journey exists. Destinations sometimes change. New opportunities emerge. Markets evolve. Purpose matures. When the destination changes, it should change intentionally, not because the current quietly carried the organization somewhere it never intended to go. The compass. The compass represents the structural patterns introduced in letter 13A, together with their design responses. A compass does not tell the navigator what to do. It provides orientation. Whenever experience and intention begin pointing in different directions, the compass helps executives determine where they are before deciding where they should go next. The navigational chart. The navigational chart represents the journey developed throughout letters 13B through 23. Those letters describe the terrain we have already traveled together. Each one explored a different aspect of intentionally designing governance. Together, they provide guidance for moving from present reality towards intentional design. The navigator. Every navigation system requires one final element. Someone must intentionally use the instruments. The river does not decide the journey. The lighthouse does not steer the organization. The compass does not choose the course. The navigational chart does not make decisions. The executive brings those instruments together. That responsibility is stewardship. Individually, each instrument is valuable. Together, they become an executive navigation system. Stewardship. Throughout this series, the word stewardship is used in a very specific way. Stewardship is the ongoing responsibility of intentionally guiding an organization toward the destination it has intentionally chosen. It begins with observation. It matures through understanding. It is strengthened through intentional design. It is sustained through continual calibration. Stewardship naturally influences every aspect of governance. Administration becomes more intentional because decisions are no longer made from habit alone. Policies continue serving their original purpose because they are periodically examined rather than simply accumulated. Accountability becomes clear because responsibility and authority continue evolving together. Organizational resilience grows because leaders recognize change while it is still developing instead of after it has become regression. Stewardship, therefore, becomes more than maintaining governance. It protects the integrity of the organization's purpose as the river, the environment, and the organization itself continue to evolve. As stewardship matures, perspective matures. As perspective matures, altitude increases. From a higher altitude, relationships that once appeared isolated begin revealing the larger landscape they have always been part of. Governance designs the journey. Stewardship continually guides it. Calibration. If stewardship is the responsibility of the navigator, calibration is the discipline that makes stewardship possible. Calibration does not happen once. It happens whenever experience changes the way an executive understands what they are observing. Sometimes the organization changes. Sometimes the executive's interpretation changes. Sometimes both occur together. Each time understanding changes, another calibration has occurred. Calibration is not simply adjusting direction. It is expanding perspective. Without calibration, experience gradually becomes familiarity. Familiarity can become confidence. Confidence can quietly stop asking questions that once seemed essential. Calibration intentionally interrupts that process. It allows executives to ask, are we still seeing clearly? Are we interpreting this situation through present reality or through assumptions that have gradually become familiar? Are we still moving toward the destination we intentionally chose, or has the current begun carrying us somewhere else? Calibration is not doubt. It is disciplined stewardship. Executive navigation flow. Every case study throughout the remainder of stage 5 follows the same progression. Each calibration represents another level of executive maturity. The organization may appear unchanged. The executive's perspective has expanded. As perspective expands, stewardship matures. As stewardship matures, the journey continues from a higher altitude. Executive navigation chart. Every case study throughout the remainder of stage 5 will use this chart as its point of orientation. The sequence begins with experience. An event allows the organization to reveal something that previously remained unnoticed. That results in a calibration, where the executive realizes something is different than what they believed. Then there is recognition, when the executive begins understanding what the experience is actually revealing. There is a calibration, where the executive realizes they need a way to interpret what they have just experienced. Name is the next phase of the navigation chart. When we reference letter 13A to identify the structural pattern that best explains the experience, the calibration part provides language for what has just been observed. That leads us to the design part, which guides the executive to move from the structural pattern to its design response, which directs the executive to consult letters 13B through 23 to engage the next calibration to help the executive understand what should be intentionally designed or strengthened. This is where stewardship is the process used to guide the organization with the river, lighthouse, compass, and navigational chart as the organization continues evolving. This calibration is the part where stewardship has reached another level of maturity. And from this new altitude, relationships that were once hidden become visible, allowing the next stage of the journey to begin with greater clarity and intentionality. Notice something important. The organization may not change between one step and the next. The executive does. Each calibration changes the point from which the executive continues observing. That is why the same organization can produce entirely different conversations once leaders begin seeing it differently. Returning to letter 13A. Until this point, letter 13A has primarily served as a reference. Beginning with stage 5, its role expands. It becomes the executive's compass. The structural pattern summary does more than catalog hidden organizational conditions. It provides orientation whenever experience reveals something that is not yet fully understood. Rather than immediately asking, how do we solve this? Stage 5 invites us to ask a different question. Which structural pattern best explains what we are observing? That question slows us down just enough to distinguish symptoms from structure. Only after orientation should intentional redesign begin. Returning to letters 13B to 23, if letter 13A serves as the compass, letters 13B through 23 serve as the navigational chart. Those letters provide guidance through the terrain of intentional governance. They represent the journey we have already traveled together. They demonstrate how organizations move from hidden structural patterns toward intentional design responses, from fragmented activity towards coherence, and from governance by reaction towards governance by design. A navigator rarely reaches the destination in one movement. Course corrections are expected. Conditions change. New information becomes available. The navigational chart allows those adjustments to occur without losing sight of the destination. That is the difference between reaction and navigation. How we will travel together. Beginning with the next letter, we will no longer discuss governance primarily as concepts. We will experience it together. Each remaining letter in stage 5 will begin with an actual organizational case study. Together, we will observe what happened. Together, we will identify where we are on the executive navigation chart. Together, we will recalibrate, establish orientation. Together, we will identify the structural pattern, connect that pattern to its design response. Together, we will intentionally determine the next course. Finally, together, we will return to stewardship, asking not only how the organization changes, but how our own observation continues maturing as the organization evolves. The purpose is not merely to understand individual case studies. The purpose is to develop a repeatable method for navigating your own organization. Looking ahead, the next letter begins our first voyage together. We will not begin by searching for solutions. We will begin by sharing an experience. Together we will observe, recalibrate, establish orientation, identify the structural pattern, and intentionally determine the next course. By repeating that journey, one experience at a time, stewardship gradually matures. As stewardship matures, our perspective continues expanding. From each new altitude, relationships that once appeared disconnected begin revealing the larger landscape they have always been part of. By the end of stage 5, recognizing structural patterns becomes only the beginning. The deeper work is continually navigating with greater clarity, greater intentionality, and greater stewardship. The journey continues. This time, we continue it together, not simply as observers of governance, but as stewards intentionally guiding it. Thank you.